Inspired by swashbuckler movies such as Zorro or The Three Musketeers, among others, En Garde is a game mixing third-person combat and platforming in order to create an interesting gameplay based around parries and dodges, while always fighting outnumbered. To effectively make that work, without making the enemies branded, the game will allow the players to use their environment as a tool, just like in the movies. In this video, I'll analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the game, while digging deep into the gameplay, story, and everything around it to explain it. This video will feature lots of spoilers, but since those will mostly be toward the end of the video, do not hesitate to stay a while to see if you like the game or not. And anyway, if you're interested in this game for its story, I can tell you right now that you have high chances to be disappointed, because the story parts are few and far between, and only a mean to make the player fight opponents. It all begins with a trial. Adalia's brother, Alejandro, wakes her up early in the morning, because a mysterious and handsome gentleman did run off with her sword. Adalia will decide to give chase and take back what is hers. We'll soon meet El Vigilante, who is definitely not Alejandro. He will put us through a trial in order to see if we're competent enough to be his sidekick, and fight the Count Duke together with him. Adalia the Volador never backed down from a challenge though. We'll face a trial that will serve as a tutorial. En Garde isn't only about fighting, it also features a fair bit of platforming, which is admittedly relatively easy and controlled pretty well. We'll cross the water by jumping on boats, then grab a bar to pass over a closed door. We'll find our sword there, but I'll skip the tutorial, as it's not gonna be very interesting. We'll talk about the combat in a real fight. That fight will be against a soldier and then two lackeys. Those are the two first enemy types of the game. Both are pretty straightforward. The soldier has 2 health points and often launch attacks that need to be parried. We can mash against him, but it won't be very effective and will get hit. The timing of his attacks is pretty slow, so it's easy to predict him. To lower his health, we need to break his guard bar by attacking and parrying his attacks. A bit similar to what Sekiro does. We obviously need to do that twice, since he has 2 health points. As for the lackeys, they run incredibly fast, so running away from them is actually a sure way to get hit. But other than that, they have only 1 health point. They also are one of the 2 only units in the game that you can mash until KO. What I mean by mash is that you can repeatedly press the attack button to beat them. Sometimes, units may require multiple parry in a row before we can attack, like this soldier there. It's something that is fairly common and that we'll see a lot. We can also notice the friendly banters between Adalia and the soldiers.
Why you? Wait, was that a compliment?
I wasted my compliments on you.
It keeps the mood light-hearted. There are no killings in this game, just opponents testing their skills against each other. As we cross the levels, we'll also meet some points of interest that tell various things about the characters of the game or their culture. Obviously nothing groundbreaking there, but it adds something to the game. As you can imagine, we'll meet more opponents as we progress. Since the game is 90% based around its gameplay, we are not done talking about it. We'll learn another defensive ability. We've seen the parry just before, which is relatively useful, as it helps breaking our opponent's guard bar. Now we'll have to use the dodge mechanic. By pressing the button once, we'll evade an attack. By pressing it twice, we'll do a roll with invulnerability frames. We are now facing 2 soldiers, and while we are not facing Nobel Prize candidates, they can fight together. If a soldier launches an attack that you have to parry, the second one will automatically launch another one that can only be dodged. Those are the red attacks you should see on screen right now. Basically, every single attack in the game can be dodged, but only the white ones can be parried. For now, with only 2 enemies, it is bearable, and we can somehow find a way to dodge everything and slowly grind down their health points. But I'll tell you straight, it won't work later on. You might tell yourself right now, how are we supposed to win if they cover each other's weaknesses? Well, you see, we're playing Adalia the Volador, an extremely nimble swashbuckler. But she isn't only nimble, she's also smart and cunning. Adalia can kick things, and sometimes enemies. In this example, we'll simply kick boxes toward our enemies in order to isolate them, but we can do so much more. The gameplay of En Garde is centered around its environment. We'll be able to grab items in order to throw them at our enemies later on. Fighting close to water? Why not kick our enemies into it? Close to stairs? Those are weapons too. Once the fatigue gauge of our opponents reach 0, they'll be weakened and much easier to deal with. There is no fair fights. We are fighting outnumbered all the time. We have to use our wits to succeed. Using the environment will allow us to greatly reduce the number of enemies or to incapacitate them long enough to have a fair duel in 1 versus 1. And in those, Adalia never lose. Unless obviously we, the player, lack some skill. Because while the game looks cartoony and cheerful, it isn't exactly an easy game. It is heavily reliant on your skill, and it requires good reaction time to master it. While Vanguard doesn't allow the players to pet cats or dogs, like many recent games do, we can instead pet the chickens, and that's much better. Since enemies aren't able to cross ledges, it is possible to play with their AI a bit in order to gain a lead, given that the arena you're battling in allows it. We finally reach the end of our trial. El Vigilante will be our final foe. El Vigilante has 4 health points, and will fight alone at first. Then call a few allies when he drops to 2 health points. As that happens, we'll also be healed to full health. He's overall a quite easy boss that continues the trend of that mission that is supposed to help us learn the game. The episode ends on a discussion between Adalia and El Vigilante. Nothing too interesting, and as of now we've learned 2 things. First, the game doesn't take itself seriously at all. Each character is a basic archetype. Adalia is the noble hero that fights against injustice, inspired by Zorro and some other heroes from swashbuckler movies. Alejandro is the good brother that tries to be a superhero, even though he's far less competent than his sister. And all the other characters are of the same mold. It leads to the story and events of the game to be easy to predict, and thus to the story not being predominant. Instead, it will be the humor and personalities of the characters, good or bad, that will dictate how the game flows. On that part, the game is great. Even the soldiers have a personality and interact with Adalia on a constant basis. They have plenty of dialogues and it never gets old. Most characters only interact with Adalia and only exist in this game because she's there. The game makes it obvious that it's her story and each character inside is there to make her shine. And secondly, I cannot pronounce any Spanish words for the life of me. Now that we are done with the first level, we'll see an ending screen showing how many times we've died, how many points of interest we found, what challenges we completed, and obviously how long will it take. Nothing too fancy, but it's good that it's there. Let's continue to the second episode. Adalia is in prison, but not for long. Luckily for her, that prison has more holes than Swiss cheese, and she'll find a way to get back to her sword pretty quickly. We'll now find items to grab and throw on enemies pretty much all the time. There is different types of items. That one we've just used, stun a guard briefly, but also allow us to do a critical strike on him, if we're quick enough. There are other items that can stun guards for much longer, without allowing us to crit. Those are often centered around helping us to crowd control. In fact, they also tend to hit multiple targets as well. There is obviously a few more that you might see while we progress through the levels, such as the bucket, slippery floors, grenades, etc. I guess the important thing to remember is that the game plays heavily around status effect and crowd control to make the game more fair for the player. For example, something as simple as doing a somersault on top of a few targets will be enough to grant them a surprise status effect that will advantage us, as first of all we'll be able to attack first, and second, we can also decide to kick them, which cannot be done at all time. And kicking an enemy is extremely powerful in this game, especially if the environment favors you. We've talked about the parry system before, but I'd like to mention something related to critical strikes. Parrying in this game is easy to do, but there is also the possibility of doing perfect parries that break the guard meter even more and allow for a critical strike right after. It might all seem complicated, because all I'm talking about is gameplay, but it is actually pretty simple, maybe even too simple. Vanguard doesn't feature any way for you to progress outside of your own skill. It doesn't have a leveling, nor a skill system. You do not unlock anything as you play. Adalia will be as strong in the first level as she will be in the last. It's all about you, the player. Is that bad? Absolutely not. But you have to know that it's a philosophy of making games that we see less, as nowadays, most games add some form of progression in their gameplay, in order to keep the player hooked. And there is a reason to that. Games tend to be longer nowadays. A game like Vanguard has to be short, otherwise it will become a pain. Luckily, that game knows itself well, and doesn't take more than 5 to 6 hours to finish. Depending on your skill, you might even be faster. I do think that to enjoy the game in all its glory, you need to be good at it, because it doesn't offer much outside of challenge and satisfying combat. Sure, the game is quite pretty, colorful, and the soundtrack is also great, but the core of this game, the bones, is that simplistic gameplay that you will either like enough to play through the game, and maybe more, or that you will find boring, or simply too demanding, and then it will become a slog. Luckily, the game features 3 different difficulties for its story mode: easy, normal, hard, so you can easily make it easier in case you do not like it and just want to finish the game. But I'll be honest, if you were to not like the gameplay, there will be no reason to play this game. The difficulty in this case will be like stepping stones. It will help you keep the game entertaining, granted that you like it, by increasing its difficulty to not become boring. And for those that love it, there is the Arena Sign mode that allows the game to be played through 4 different difficulties, and that features perks as you complete rounds, but also malus to play around. It might sound underwhelming the way I say it, but that game mode is actually really good. I even thought that it was better than the story mode itself. The perk can really change the way you play. For example, I had a perk that created slippery floors around every item thrown, which is cool. But the best perk that I've had was weakened enemies falling downstairs are immediately defeated. I've tried that on the boss of the last wave, and it just works. The game rewards you handsomely for playing around perks, without trying to make the boss immune to them. That's great. Now back to the second level, we'll meet the Grenadier here, a new enemy that run away and throw bombs at us. This is the second and last unit in the game that will allow us to mash the attack button without being punished. Nothing too big about them, they have 2 health points but no guard meter, although they will use a defensive move and push us away if we get too close. The key is simply to throw them a projectile to hit them easily. They also can friendly fire, which doesn't do a lot of damage, but stun our enemies, so we can play around their bombs to help us in fights. A while later, we'll meet 2 soldiers hiding behind a portcullis. We'll now face the 4th unit of the game, the Captain. The Captain has 2 health points and a pretty bothersome effect at first. She is shielded and cannot take any attacks at all. We first need to weaken her by throwing items at her, or kicking the table to make her fall. Once she lost 1 health point, she enters a second phase where she throws her shield away and charges furiously. There she'll block most items thrown at her, and we'll have to either fight her fair or weaken her enough with the environment to get rid of her easily. She is overall a more bothersome unit than the ones we've seen until now, but she isn't as bothersome as the 2 next ones. Before reaching the boss of that episode, I'd like to talk about another mechanic we've yet to talk about. The Panache meter. To make it short, it's basically a meter that fills as we fight and that allows us to do a strong move that cannot be blocked, parried or dodged, and that restores us 1 health point. Those moves aren't exactly game breaking, but they can take us out of pretty nasty situations. There is 3 of them. The first one will be a thrust on a single target that allows to deal significant damage to the guard meter. The second one is an area of effect sword slash meant to help us disengage from many foes. As for the third one, it is an unblockable kick, and given how strong kicks are in the right circumstances, it can be pretty devastating. Those 3 moves aren't really available at the beginning of the game. We unlock them as we progress through the levels, but given that it's quite minor, I don't think it matters all that much. Currently, as we're about to fight the Count Duke, which is the second boss of the game, we have 2 of those Panache moves unlocked. The Count Duke's motive for putting us in jail was so we do not witness him burning all the caricatures that were made about him. This boss fight is slightly tougher than the first one. The Count Duke has 4 health points, and will summon soldiers to help him every time we lower his health. He also alters between 2 stances, one that is more composed and focused on proper sword fighting, and another one enraged, all about quick attacks but that forget about defending. The first stance is pretty basic, but the second one will have him run towards us extremely quickly, and when there is a lot of soldiers already, it is quite tough to deal with. The Count Duke will simply change his stance every time he loses a health point, so on that part, it is easy to predict. Once victorious, Adalia will make sure that the words dignity and Count Duke will never be associated again. We'll now head to the third episode. The Count Duke has taken possession of the keys to the city, which gives him way more power than Adalia would like. She wishes to fix that now that they've been celebrating all day and are all completely drunk. This mission, like the two previous ones, will feature new units. The first one is the Elite Soldier, a unit that has 2 health points, but that also possesses a special status effect that will now make the game a tad harder. That status effect, that is represented by a yellow lightning icon, directly interacts with the guard meter of any targets that have it. This is probably the most important effect in the entire game, but to make it short, if you stop attacking the target for too long, dodge instead of parry, or get hit by anything, their guard meter will be refilled completely. Obviously, the next and last units, as well as every bosses, will all have that effect to make things better. I know that this is actually a pretty controversial mechanic in the game. A lot of people think that there is way too many enemies that will start to have it from now on, and that it makes the game just not fun to play. I personally believe that once we start fighting those enemies more and more, we actually think that the game is too easy without them. But it comes with a problem. Some enemies are quick to attack and you really need good reaction time to see if you either have to dodge or parry. And if you guess wrong, you'll pay for it. I do think that the game is more rewarding this way, and ultimately it makes the game better. But I also think that if you're too slow or not good enough, you'll probably be frustrated for a while before you either improve your reaction time or find a way to reliably weaken your opponents, as it obviously disables that effect. I myself was struggling with it, as enemies can be really quick. I've played on normal difficulty, and enemies do not really give any informations, whether they are gonna do an attack that you need to block or parry. There is a special sound when there is an attack to dodge, but that's all visual outside of that. Obviously, enemies have limited string of attacks they can do, and you can learn that, but there isn't any pattern order, it is random. So that's where you'll need to be skilled in order to succeed. Good reaction time is key to be good at En Garde. Luckily, the developers were nice enough to give us a few seconds of invulnerability frames after getting hit, so it isn't possible to lose all our health due to one mistake. It's not always a bug-free experience either, but bugs are rare. In this level, we'll meet Zaida, a pirate girl, that is also Adalia's childhood crush. We'll work together in order to steal the keys. But our motivations aren't the same. While Adalia wants to give back everything to the poor people, Zaida is more interested by profit. We'll later get into a fight in a small room against 3 elite soldiers, and that fight probably describes well what I mean when I say if you're lacking in skill, it can go really badly for you. Well, in this case, it did go bad for me, but look, after a few tries, I eventually succeeded, and pretty easily at that.
It's my middle name. Not a chance.
You're too predictable.
Ole. You almost got me. Keep on trying.
Why you? Wait, was that a compliment?
Pardon the affront I'm about.
The game is really smooth and feels great once you're doing good. Sometimes the game won't necessarily lock the target we'd like, especially since there are always a lot of enemies on screen. But there is a button to change targets, so it's just a question of getting used to press it whenever it is needed. As we're about to reach the keys, after fighting our way through numerous rooms and activating a few levers, Zaida will already be there, and stay just long enough to tell us that she stole the keys for herself and tricked us. We now have to chase her through the gardens. She's gonna beat that level's final boss. But before that, we'll meet the last unit of the game, called the Duelist. Weirdly enough, there isn't much to talk about for this one. It's an elite soldier, but with more aggressive patterns. The Duelist will not hesitate to leap on us, and will be much quicker than the other units. He also defends himself much better than any other units, outside of bosses, and won't hesitate to parry us as well. Obviously, he possesses the Yellow Thunder effect and has only 2 health points. Is he the best unit in the game? Yes, certainly. Now back to Zayda. As every single boss in this game, she has 4 health points. She is pretty straightforward at first, only she has a really quick thrust. Once she loses 2 health points, she enters another phase where she will throw us bombs, and we will have to do some platforming to reach her. Upon reaching her, the sword fight will resume. Now that she is left with only 1 health point, she will create copies of herself to fight us, and start throwing bombs from further away. Just like before, upon reaching her, we'll fight some more, and finally defeat her. That boss fight is in my opinion the best in the entire game. I've liked how creative it was, and that I had to use platforming to battle her. If I have to remember one fight from this game, it will be this one, for sure. The scenery is probably not for nothing in that either. This area is gorgeous, and it's a real pleasure to duel there. We'll now be heading to the 4th and last episode. This time, we'll be fighting through a fortress on a desert island. If all the previous episodes had something new to them, that's not the case for this one. Here we'll be fighting all the bosses that we've already seen, while looking for the Count Duke's treasure. Obviously, each bosses here were slightly buffed to make it slightly harder. The level obviously recycle most things from the 3 previous chapters for a reason. I've already said it before, En Garde is fairly short. And luckily it is, because I do not believe the game would have gained a lot from being longer than this. This 4th episode was necessary, as without it the game would have been too quick to end. But anything more than this might have been overkill. Back to chapter 4, we'll beat Alejandro, Zayda, and finally the Count Duke. After both our previous opponents were taken prisoners, we've now reached the ending. Since we've already seen those bosses, I don't feel like talking about them again, especially since there is really nothing special about any of those fights. The very last fight of the game has us swarmed with enemies, but will give us plenty of tools to deal with it. It's a pretty forgettable fight that you should see right now on your screen. If any of those fights have to be remembered, it is again the fight against Zayda. That probably is the best boss of the entire game. But I still felt like showing the ending for those that simply won't play the game.
Didn't they teach you to never stand this close to a cannon?
So, we're not getting paid, are we?
What do we do now, Capitan?
Whatever the Count Duke says.
So much for a flawless conspiracy, Count Duke.
Someone sitting on my hand.
Silence, buffoons! This is all your fault!
Haha! I won't be the one ending up in a cage for once.
Why, you foolhardy, flamboyant braggarts! You think you're better than me? Why do people love you? What have I ever done to deserve this?
Why didn't you tell me you'd be on this island? I'd have come with you.
I knew you'd be here. You always end up where the things get interesting.
What do you mean?
You know, intrigue, arch nemesis, the fate of the nation.
Are you implying I throw myself at danger?
I'm not implying anything. By the way, I'm still not sure you can handle yourself.
I literally just saved you from an evil conspiracy.
You can never be too sure.
Are you asking for a rematch?
I don't know. What do you say?
I say, en garde!